Opening scene, we see Oleg and Elena having dinner. This is their first date, but the very smooth and suave Oleg manages to get Elena in bed that very same night. And all of this was happening in Moscow, and then we see a plane in Paris, and we see every passenger on the plane and the hostess just falling unconscious, and the plane crashing, and the lights turning off everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere in the world, except for this tiny circle in Moscow. And in this tiny circle, Oleg and Elena notice a lot of drones circling every building. And these are all police drones, so they're pretty much surprised. And everybody in the hotel rushes downstairs to leave, and then they see this emergency broadcast that's incredibly vague. The news anchor talks about how they don't know if it's a natural disaster that occurred, or maybe it's some kind of war. Oleg tries to call his father to see what's going on, but communications are down and his cell phone doesn't work. And then we see this big SWAT team going to do a recon mission. Their leader, Major Domatov, urges everyone that this is just strictly recon, and they should have their eyes open because they don't really know what they're expecting. They go to this tiny convenience store, they don't really find much, but one of the men gets attacked and the attacker takes away his weapon. As I've said, there's only a tiny circle where there's actual communication and lights, and the rest of the world is just dark and there's absolutely no communication, and the people in that tiny circle, the people in Moscow, don't really know what's going on. And here we see Yura, a military man that's just been drafted. He goes to a nearby station to start his service, and there he meets Mariana. She's basically the boss of this operation. And she tells the men, including Yura and Oleg, that most of the recon team that the government has sent out beyond this circle of life have never really made it back to their post, and they don't really know why. The last team that was sent out had about 70 tanks, and they all vanished. So now the team's objective is to find out what's making all the men disappear. And they also found that people outside the circle have died of some kind of neurotoxin, a neurotoxin that their own bodies have produced, and the government doesn't know how that happened or how to stop it. That very same night, a bunch of hostiles approach their post. They can see them approaching on their radar, and they can see that they're very big. The entire SWAT team fires at these aggressors, and next thing we know is Oleg waking up in the morning after he passed out that night. And he wakes up to find that there's a giant bear on top of him. Apparently, the attackers were all bears, and a lot of men were killed by that attack, and Oleg's leg also got hurt. But apparently, the lady that he was doing a month ago, Elena, actually works for the military. She's a doctor in the military, and she's more than happy to assist Oleg and his injuries. Putting aside Oleg and Elena's drama for a second, Mariana tells Major Domatov that there are people that can explain this bear attack. And Major Domatov is pretty skeptical about all this because the people that Mariana is talking about are people who allegedly got superpowers after the primary event. The primary event being the thing that happened about a month ago, where all the lights were shut off and the circle of life in Moscow lost communication with the outside world. And there were people inside the circle of life that got some kind of communication with the outside. They get visions and some kind of message. And amongst these people that they call the censors is Sasha. Here we see him in a clinic having this weird nightmare and seeing things that are not there. He sees a guy called Zenya. He tells him that he's sent by a person called Id, and he explains everything to him. He tells him that the first wave took out all electronics, and the second wave killed a lot of biological life forms, and the third wave, which has not hit yet, will turn everybody that's living in the quarantine zone to attack the circle of life. And this Zenya person tells Sasha that he's gonna help him and this other person called Id find the person that controls these people who live in the quarantine. And he tells Sasha that these people are about 160 million. And they're not really human because they've lost all of their self-control and will. And now that they have enough information about what's going on, Mariana decides to deploy the recon team. And Oleg and Yura and Elena as the medic, and also a person called Olya who's from the press, get deployed with the SWAT team and they go to do some recon. And in this quarantine zone, this dark zone where a bunch of people have survived, they see that everything is destroyed. And the people that survive start to riot for no reason. They start to attack the police, they attack other civilians. It's just complete chaos. And at this point, everybody now knows that everyone in the world is dead, aside from some people in the quarantine zone. Meaning almost 99.5% of all human life is exterminated and only 0.5% are left. And the recon teams divide into small groups, and Oleg, Yura, Olya, and Eliana, with their respective groups, go deep into the quarantine zone. And as they were doing their recon mission, Sasha gets a visit from someone who calls himself Id. And from first impression, you're like, okay, it's just a creepy bald dude. But no, this Id guy is an alien. Mariana tries to take him into custody, but he shows her his power by controlling her own troops and making them think that she's id, as he can get into the minds of mortal men and make them see whatever he wants to. And id tells Mariana that he can kill her, but he just wants to have a conversation. And as they were conversing, id tells Mariana everything. He tells her that human beings are actually a virus, and his kind are coming to invade their planet. And they're invading Earth because they have lost their star, meaning they don't have a sun, and they need a sun to survive. And human beings are actually planted on Earth as a virus by his kind thousands of years ago to destroy the developed beings of Earth. And these developed beings of Earth he's talking about are not really human. It tells Mariana that humanity was just supposed to reproduce and cause violence everywhere. And that's why his kind made them. So to humanity, id is like a god. And as Mariana was being told the secrets of the universe, Oleg and Yura, on their recon mission, were having problems of their own. Their lieutenant gets killed by this kid that they saved from a convenience store, and most of the recon groups get attacked simultaneously by a bunch of civilians with a lot of weapons. And Mariana, back at the outpost, gets told by id that he's actually on humanity's side, and he came to Earth about 200,000 years ago with someone, and he thought that he was the only one left, but he was wrong. The other being that he came with, called Ra, is actually the one controlling all the civilians that are attacking the outpost and the recon soldiers. And id tells Mariana that they need to kill Ra, and then id would take control of these mindless people and neutralize them. But in order to do that, they first need to realize where Ra is, and to find him, id needs to use Sasha, because he has seen him before and their minds are connected. So id uses Sasha to know the locations of Ra, and then they leave with another team of people to Ra's location. But now that Sasha has seen Ra and made contact with him, and since Ra doesn't want his location compromised, he sends a bunch of tactical nukes to Sasha's whereabouts, and he blows up the outpost. Id knew that this would happen, but he didn't tell Mariana or Major Domatov because he just didn't care, and all he cared about was just killing Ra. And now the only people left are soldiers who survived the recon mission, and Major Domatov and Mariana's new team that made it outside the outpost before it got blown to bits. And on their way to Ra's location, the soldiers that survived the recon mission attack join Major Domatov's team because there's really no outpost to return to, and they all head to where Ra is. They now know that he's on top of this giant building. They mow down so many people to get there, and after killing a lot of mindless people, they finally make it to the top, and Ra and id finally face off, and id manages to kill Ra before he killed him. And to finish things off, Yura puts a grenade inside of Ra's heart, and Ra just turns to ashes. And as soon as Ra dies, it takes control of the civilians that were protecting him, and he neutralizes them. And by neutralize, I mean he kills them, because there was no way that they could go back to normal at this point. And the survivors, Oleg, Yura, Olia, and the rest, start to question what really just happened. It tells them that his ship is coming, and there are millions more like him on that ship. He tells them that enough of humanity has survived, and he'll teach them how to take out his own kind. But Xenia starts to question it. He asks him why he didn't come earlier to save humanity from the radiation that killed about 8 billion people. And Id tells him that if he came early, the alien ship that was approaching would have gone into defensive mode and this plan wouldn't have worked. So the billions of people that perished mean almost nothing to Id. And Xenia tries to kill Id, but he ends up killing Mariana instead because Id is controlling his brain. And Oleg also wants to kill Id now because they didn't really think this was the plan, the extermination of almost every human being on the planet. And Yura tries to stop him because Yura thinks that the only way that they'll survive is if Id teaches them how to take out the incoming ship and the passengers on it. So Oleg and Yura fight. Olia ends up shooting Yura because she also wants Id to die. And when Id was distracted by the fight, Xenia manages to throw him off the building, and both Xenia and Id die. And even though Id is dead, the ship still arrives, and they find some kind of communication device that Id had with him, and they use it to open the ship. And inside, they find that all the passengers are actually hibernating, and they're not really awake yet, and there are a bunch of pipes that transport oxygen to them to awaken them. And Elena, Olia, and Oleg, who managed to get on board the ship, start breaking up these pipes. They managed to break most of the pipes, but as they were about to break the last one, they all stop because this section only had alien children in it, and their morality couldn't let them kill innocent kids, whether they were an alien species or not. And this is how the movie ends. And from the ending, we understand that even though Id and Ra thought that human beings didn't have compassion and the only drive they had was violence and procreation, from the last scene we understand that human beings have evolved beyond that. What would you have done if you were in their place? Would you have killed the alien children? Leave your comments in the comment section. Like our video, subscribe to our channel. I will see you guys on the next recap. Bye.